Welcome to this edition of Weather to Watch. It is Monday, the 17th of February, 2025. Winter still grips much of the nation. Well, here's what I'm watching. Another big snowstorm is developing, this one taking aim on Kansas and Missouri initially, but eventually causing headaches on the East Coast as well. A freezing rain outlook is actually one of the things connected to that storm as it progresses southward and eastward. Extreme cold still an issue, a lot of below zero temperatures, but a pattern shift that will, at least for many folks in the lower 48, represent a milder pattern of weather on the way. Visible satellite for the entire U.S. here showing a lot of cloudiness in the central U.S. and the northern plains. Most of that is not producing precipitation at this time, but it will here shortly. You can see the motion here, very fast jet stream motion from the northwest and also west to east sort of motion, but we can just show it to you right here on the next slide. This is what the jet stream, the 500 millibar looks like, and there's many uses for this particular tool. In this case, we just want to highlight that the center of this always separates the extreme cold from the extreme warm, and this has been all winter fairly fast flow with cold air bottled up here but ready to unleash into the central U.S. already has across the northern plains and eventually to spread south and a little bit more to the east with time. The lower 48, we're going to look at the surface analysis here, which has station models, tells me dew point, temperature, wind, and the first thing that draws attention is that departing low there in eastern Canada. Zoom in a little bit and go up to that part of the world over here, and that's this one right here, and is producing a strong wind flow in behind it. We'll zoom in a little bit more. Great Lakes eastward, we're looking at very strong winds. We'll take a look at the gusts in detail here in just a second, but lake effect snows, temperatures in the single digits in Wisconsin, teens and 20s getting into New York. The freezing line is right around the nation's capital, a little north of there actually, and that flow continues along the backside of that particular low pressure center. Meanwhile, in the northern plains, it is just simply cold with that high pressure area nosing its way in. You can see with the isobars there. That's the center of the ridge of high pressures like that, and you're looking at minus 20s, minus teens common through Montana, the Dakotas, and Minnesota. In fact, you have to go into central and southern Iowa before you pick up single-digit temperatures. There's some light snow in northern Missouri. We'll take a look at that on radar in a second. There's a stationary front in southern Missouri over along the Kansas and Oklahoma border, and it's sunny in those areas for the most part, but they are awaiting a huge winter storm. Meanwhile, Texas is trying to recover with southerly winds, but they're going to get knocked back down by the next invasion of Arctic air. Well, on the backside of that low, I told you we would talk about wind gusts, and you can see the lake effect snow bands too with this. And the yellow is the streamlines or the general flow, but we have commonly wind gusts 20, almost 30 miles per hour through Michigan, northern Indiana, Ohio, and these lake effect snow streams are very visible right here and also right here. The lake effect snows, I need to do a review on that. It has not stopped this winter at all. And I can shift this a little more to the east to show you New York State. Still, we had 40 mile per hour wind gusts this afternoon through portions of Massachusetts, right around Boston, actually, and into around Plymouth. And so, very common to see 30 and 20 mile per hour wind gusts through New York State and parts of Pennsylvania as well. The snow has been quite vigorous in New England. We're starting in Maine here, where we have snow amounts typically anywhere from 6 to 9, almost 10 inches of snow. You can see there in Reedfield, Maine, about almost 10 inches of snow there. Similar totals around that area. There's an 8.3 in upstate Maine a little bit around Temple. And if we just kind of slide this around a little bit, here in upstate New York, and if you're looking at the color code on the left here, you can already pick out the higher totals. So we have that one right there. There's an 18-inch total at Northfield, Vermont. And that's pretty much in keeping with what the forecast was for that part of the world. There were several forecast models that were putting that above, a foot and a half of snow, and it wasn't widespread, but it did occur, and I think that was pretty much in keeping with what was supposed to be happening. Meanwhile, we come back here, and these are lake effect snows mostly. We're looking at Buffalo in the center of your screen there. Now Cleveland's in the center of your screen. Lots of 2 to 4, maybe 5-inch totals there in northern Ohio. And the only other snow that is going on right now is this little disturbance through northern Missouri. This isn't the main storm that you may have heard about, but these totals haven't been very much. But we had a 4-inch total there near Red Oak, Iowa. And also in northern Missouri, looks like we have about a 4-inch total there around Albany, Missouri. And that just about wraps it up for the snow in the last 24 hours, but a lot more is coming. All sights are now on the next winter storm, and I have a personal interest in this one because it looks like the Springfield, Missouri, the town I'm in, could get anywhere from, let's say, 6 to 12 inches of snow. Some parts of Missouri may see more than that. This is the National Weather Service consensus on the snow totals for the Central Plains. So you can see there's a 10-inch, almost 11-inch total where I live. Similar totals around southwest Missouri, and a pretty broad area of, let's say, a half foot of snow. That's everything in purple right there. And it's personal. It's basically centered where I live. And this is the NAM model from this morning showing that there is indeed potential for a lot higher snow totals here with the readings going over a foot. 14-inch snow totals, and maybe even 16-inch snow totals in some isolated areas. The only thing I've been watching here is it's always been a west to east snow band, but I've seen the models vary if the heaviest band will be there, or about there, and Springfield will be the average, so we'll see what happens, but that's an important storm. We're looking at winter storm warnings extending from Salina, Kansas, all the way through southern Missouri, and now including northern Arkansas. I hadn't before, and way over even into northern Mississippi, with winter storm watches and winter weather advisories. Of course, the watches are out ahead of the storms or surrounding them typically, and then the winter weather advisory. That's actually for that snow that's going on in northern Missouri right now, and for the next snow that develops with this storm out through Nebraska. There's also an icy component to the storm. As we look here, this is the NAM's ice total forecast, so where this cold air that's allowing it to snow butts up against the warmer air and allows for freezing temperatures at the surface. We're looking at northern Louisiana into Mississippi. There's some ice totals Wednesday and Thursday that could be up to 0.2 of an inch or a little bit more in some areas in that area. And then this really catches my attention here in North Carolina. We have half-inch ice totals there, maybe a little bit more. So that, and actually it's approaching 1 inch as I look at the color scheme there. So that is Wednesday and Thursday, a few days out, but still very worthy of watching here. And there'll be snow north of that as well. Extreme cold warnings from Canada to Texas, all the way through the central U.S. here. We're looking at readings that are far below normal for what is considered normal for most of these areas. So you don't see that very often. Let's go through the low temperatures here. So if it's green and blue, it's below normal. If it's sub-zero, it's basically this darker blue. So all this area on Tuesday morning will be below zero. With the star indicating the coldest temperature on the map here. It doesn't tell you what it is on this graph, it just tells you where it is. But you're looking at departures there that are about 40 degrees below normal in parts of North Dakota. That's that purple color with actual readings down in the minus 30s. So on Wednesday morning, still almost the same. The star hasn't moved much at all, but the cold air dives all the way into Texas, where the freezing line in Texas gets down south now of San Antonio, and not quite to the coast, but close. These are low temperatures. And then on Thursday, it is at the coast here. So we're looking at freezing temperatures getting down to Houston, all the way down almost to the southern tip of Texas, just stopping shy of, let's say, the Brownsville area. They're looking at a low of 43 on Thursday morning. The star still up there in North Dakota, but some interesting thing on Friday, that actual lowest temperature forecast is actually just north of Omaha. But look how much of the country is cool, but warming out west, and that's a sign of things to come. I like going to these northern sites and looking at their temperature forecast, but this is interesting in Glasgow, Montana. So their high today was -13. Their high Tuesday will be -10, but the high by Sunday will be 41 degrees. So that's a 54-degree temperature rise in about 6 days. So very good for them. That's some of the downslope flow that is going to be developing, and I'll explain that in this next graphic. Well, we do have a pattern shift to talk about, and for most of the U.S., it does spell a milder pattern of weather coming up. This is a 500 millibar analysis. The jet stream flow separates warm from cold air, identifies storm systems, and we're going to use the EPS, which is the European Ensemble. So it's a blend of multiple runs from the same time period, but slightly different initial conditions. So we're just kind of watching what happens here. We have a kind of a cutoff version of the polar vortex sitting here at the initiation time right here. A lot of cold air in association with that, obviously, and that's getting worse as we go through time here. That kind of digs in. So there's a lot of Arctic air up in this part of the world, still north of the jet stream. So this is Tuesday night, roughly this map here. But as we go on down the line a little bit more here, this passes by. So this is Thursday, and what's starting to happen in the western U.S. here is a building ridge of high pressure right here. And that's actually a sign of fair weather, especially starting out west, where it's been extremely cold. That will eventually spill into places like Montana, for example, that have been sub-zero for a long time. If we move this out, this, by the way, is Friday about noon. Then we go into the weekend. Let's look at Sunday about noon right there. So again, this ridge really builds in with lots of strong jet stream winds. So what's going to happen here is a big downslope warm-up on the eastern side of the Rockies. This area right here, and a lot of wind associated with that too. I wouldn't be surprised if you had 60, 70 mile per hour surface wind gusts as that jet stream develops. Now, the northeast is still on a colder flow over the weekend, but as I've been saying, this kind of builds a little bit more. So if we just kind of take this a little bit more into the future, you can see that ridge flattens a little bit, but builds eastward, and that will be reflected in the temperature pattern. That right there is Tuesday morning of next week, so about 7 days from now, and that gets into the area where much beyond that it's probably a lot less accurate, but it does show that also that the northeast will still be pretty chilly, not as cold as, let's say, the northern plains is going to be over the next couple of days, but still pretty chilly upstate New York and into portions of New England. The final two charts I'll show you are the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook. That's this coming Saturday through Wednesday of next week, and it looks like things are changing. The west is getting very warm potentially, while only the southeastern U.S. is chilly now, and even that will wear off with time. And on the precipitation front, it looks like a lot more drier air is working its way across the country with a kind of an above normal rain spike there in Washington. Could be a Pineapple Express sort of atmospheric river flow up there eventually, and maybe a little bit of wetness in South Texas and also in Florida. Thanks for watching this edition of Weather to Watch. It comes out every other day, or as the weather necessitates. Please remember to share this with your friends, subscribe to the channel, or at the very least, like what you just watched. Thanks.